You are watching Sammy the Interviewing Toucan, made possible by the Indiana Young Readers Center. Hey, everybody, it's Sammy, and I'm so excited. I'm here today with Cynthia Argentine. Hi, Cynthia, how are you?
Hi, Sammy. It's really fun to be here. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Aw, I'm so happy to be talking to you. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
You did, Cynthia Argentine. Yeah, like Argentina, but without the A at the end.
Do people sing that song to you a lot? Don't cry for me, Cynthia Argentine. Do they do that ever?
Hey, great voice, by the way.
Thanks.
You're a singing and interviewing toucan.
Thank you.
Um, I didn't get it very often, but my kids did in school, actually. So that's kind of funny. Sometimes they're
Oh,
English teachers or they're
that
music teachers.
that is hilarious. Well, let's just dive in. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the wonderful and fabulous state of Indiana.
Sure. So, as you said, I'm Cynthia Argentine and I'm a writer. And I particularly like to write about nature, science, art, and true stories about fascinating people. I've lived in Indiana for almost 30 years. So, I was born in Virginia and raised there, went to college there. And then I lived a short while in New England. But now I have been in Indiana almost 30 years, and all my children have been raised here. So it's definitely home. We have had a tremendous sense of community here. There's a great sense of togetherness, and people are warm and friendly. And so I have to confess, I do miss the ocean sometimes. But other than that, I love what Indiana offers, the forest and the trails and the people. It's a lovely place to be.
Well, I have to agree with you about the ocean. It's a pretty fantastic place, and I don't blame you for missing it at all. But I also love what you said about hiking because hiking is so great. Cynthia, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
And like I mentioned a minute ago, I really like to write true stories. And right now I have um, three books out, and all of them are about something true. And so you've got my picture, the cover of Night Becomes Day there, and that's one of my more recent books. And that's about nature and all the transformations that can happen about in all of the natural world. And we can talk more about that in a minute. But what I really like about this kind of work is I get to discover new topics and then do research on my own about them. And then I can also interview people. And I love to interview a scientist to learn more about his or her work, and then take that and craft it into something that's a story or a poem or like an interesting article. Because I've done a lot of magazine articles too, but that's one of the fun things about the work. And the variety of topics is fun too.
I had a question for you. Did you do the photography in this book?
No, and this was such a fun part of the project for me because I had pictures in mind, and I did find a lot of photographs and send a couple to the publisher, which was the publisher is Millbrook Press. But they were in charge of finding the photographs and coming up with the really artistic design of the book. And they were very fun to work with because they included me in that process. If they found photographs, they would email them to me and then show me what they were thinking. And I would go through and say, yes, that's a perfect illustration for the concept I'm talking about. You know, maybe it's a volcano. There's a lot of things in the book, or flowers blooming, or there's many things, glaciers, and that might be exactly what I had in mind. But sometimes they would find something even cooler than what I maybe had pictured. So, like the glaciers is a good example of that one. I love the photo in there of the ice, and then there's a snow picture. So that was a fun discovery for me too, to be able to have a collaboration with the team at the publisher.
I love that. I'm always so fascinated by how a book comes together. And it's really cool to hear about a collaboration between an author and the publisher. That's really neat. So, Cynthia, can you tell us a little bit more about where you are specifically in your writing journey and where do you hope to be someday?
That's a great question. I appreciate it. I would say since I have a few books out, I'm maybe early to mid career. And I've been writing, honestly, since I was a child. I always liked writing poetry or essays, or I didn't even mind doing research papers. Some people don't love that, but I like that in school. sometimes I would write for the school newspaper. So I've always been writing. And then I went into magazine writing, and that was also very fun. But I'm pretty new with the book publishing. So I think going forward, I want to continue with the books. There's something a little more permanent about books. I remember being a child and just loving going to the library and looking through the books and sitting down and holding one. And there's something about that when you can just kind of like hold it in your hand, and it's sort of fun.
Speaking of little kids going to the library, because you just said that you liked to do that when you were a child, do you think that reading diverse books nowadays is good for kids?
Yes, definitely. And when we say diverse books, I can think of three ways, and they're a little bit different and all important. And so, one thing when we say diverse books that comes to my mind is just a diverse range of topics. So, and a diverse range of genres. So, maybe you love poetry, you love sports, you love science or fantasy. I think it's great to be exposed to all of those. So, that's one concept of diverse books. A lot of times when we say diverse books, what we also mean is books published by diverse authors, people from all different sorts of backgrounds. So I think it's super important to have different types of authors whose books that we're reading. So people from different cultures, different parts of the world, different ages, all sorts of differences. Because honestly, when we read something through them, we get to know their story. I think books in that way can be a bridge, and when we build those bridges, that can be a way to grow in empathy and kindness towards one another. So I think that aspect of diversity is important. And then the other thing I think about with diverse books is some people have done research, and this makes intuitive sense as well, that when you see, as you're a child, and you see pictures of children who look like you in a book, you're inspired and you feel that you belong and you're seen. So I think when we have illustrations in children's books that show different skin tones and features and abilities and scenarios, different styles of dress, any of these types of things. Kids who see people that look a little bit like them or have something in common with them grow and feel empowered by that. And conversely, if they never do, they sometimes feel discouraged. The publishing industry is aware of this need and is taking steps to create a variety of books for kids.
I think you said that just beautifully. And I must say that I have always felt very empowered when I walk through, the toucan aisle at the local public library. And there's always so many books about different kinds of toucans and different kinds of birds, birds that aren't like me at all. So I love all those things that you said. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cynthia, did you bring something to share with us for show and tell today?
I did. So there were some children visiting my house last night for dinner the family we had over for dinner, and they noticed that there were apple trees in my backyard and that there were apples growing on those trees. And they said, "Mrs. Argentine, can we pick some apples?" And I said, "For sure, because apples would be a great thing for me to show Sammy the Toucan tomorrow."
Wonderful.
So these little apples are not fully grown or fully ripe. Eventually, they'll be more red. But why I thought this would be cool to show you, Sammy, is because in Night Becomes Day, one of the changes that I talk about, because honestly, people say changes in nature, and sometimes they have trouble thinking of that. Sometimes people think of right away, oh, maybe a cocoon or a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, which is a fabulous, miraculous change. There's all sorts of changes. But one of the first changes I mentioned, I can show you inside the book, is that a flower becomes a fruit. So the inspiration for partly for this whole book and partly for that spread in particular was my apple tree, because as I watched the apple blossoms bloom in springtime, and then as you can watch, over the course of the weeks, the little flower dropping the petals and the little tiny fruit growing and then ripening, it becomes this transformation. And I think a lot of kids don't live near an apple orchard, maybe have never seen the transformation of a flower into a fruit. Same is true for peaches and oranges and all kinds of fruits. So that transformation was something that I wanted kids to see. And then, like I showed you, the illustrators did such a great job of choosing really cool photos. They happened to choose a peach in this illustration. One change might be on a beach. I told you how I love the ocean. So this is one I thought about. If you've ever been to the beach and left footprints, and the wave comes, whoosh, and it recedes, and your footprints are gone. So suddenly something has disappeared. So that is a very simple change, and the whole book is set up as an opposites game. So, like a small change might be a footprint disappearing. A big change would be carving a grand canyon or a giant canyon like the Grand Canyon. So, other things were also inspired by my garden, like this little picture of a pumpkin tendril. Can you see this? But these little tendrils will reach out, they'll grow out of the stem, reach and wrap around the rope. And in my garden, I wanted to see how long that took. So I had a pumpkin growing a couple years ago. So I stuck a little stick in the ground and next to the garden, came back, and within a half an hour, a little tendril off the vine had already started winding around it. And I'm like, that is quick. That is a quick change that we can see in nature. So I just had a lot of fun coming up with different types of examples of changes, whether they were big or small, slow or fast, or there's plenty more. And maybe you can read the book to find out. That's why I brought you an apple to show you these transformations. And I love, this idea of transforming, partly because it's just fascinating, partly because it's cool science, but most importantly, because when we have that kind of sense of awe and wonder, like, I think it helps us to just develop an attitude of appreciation and wonder. And I love kids are great at this. Kids, sometimes adults have seen something 100 times, but a child seeing something for the first time is just excited, and that can bring us a joy that's really deep and important. And so that was sort of my goal, was that this book would bring people a sense of wonder and joy.
That all was so wonderful, Cynthia, and I can just see in your face that you feel so passionate about this topic. I do just have to mention one thing, and that's that I don't have any feet, so I don't leave footprints on a beach. I'm not quite sure what's happening down there, but it's definitely not feet. But that being said, I also love what you said about children just naturally being inquisitive. And another thing I want to mention is that, when children see changes in nature, they can start to see changes in themselves too. I think sometimes kids get frustrated because maybe they can't do something yet, but it's nice to know that someday they will be able to.
What a great thought. You're right. We do see changes in our body. We're growing, right? Or we have to get new shoes because we outgrow our old shoes, or we get a scrape and then it heals, which is kind of
Yeah.
amazing when you stop and think about it.
Yeah, and
So
even the idea of like you could change your mind about something, things can be fluid.
that is a great thought too. Yeah. Sammy, you are a wise bird.
Oh, thank you. Well, Cynthia, I could clearly talk to you all day, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for meeting with me today. And I hope that everybody goes out and takes a look at Night Becomes Day. It's a beautiful book, and I so wish you luck on the rest of your writing journey.
Thank you so much, Sammy. It's such a joy to talk to you.
You have been watching your favorite Hoosier Toucan, reminding you to read local. So long. Bye, Cynthia.
Goodbye, everyone.